Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. That's me. We're going to keep moving on with this week. We're halfway through it. We're going to keep looking at songs with great orchestral instruments use, not specifically in classical music. So, most likely, we're going to be looking at some rock and metal this week with classical instruments utilized well. Before we get into this one, I just want to remind everybody to like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. It helps out the channel immensely. Now let's get on with the reaction. Today's song is The True Pierce. It is by a group called So Hideous. And I have not heard of this group up until this week. when it was put on the poll, I was like, that's a new one. I don't even think it's been requested yet. If it has, just not many people. So, yeah, let's get into this. Just getting right into this. Yes, we have a really nice 6/8 feel right here. I don't really know what to say yet about anything else. So we're in 13/8. So I chuckled there at the end because the song, massively shrunk down. We got this uh, single acoustic guitar, and a couple of the lines fit within a 4/4. And I was like, oh, okay, so we simplified the musical range. Maybe we also simplified some of the time stuff. And of course, we didn't. And then I felt foolish. I was like, yeah, of course, after doing all that wild stuff with time, why would they go easy on me now? That made me chuckle. Um, yeah, where do we start with this band? Seriously. Uh, okay, I want to get the time off my chest real quick before we move into anything else. So we started out with almost a waltzy feel, but I've counted it more in six than three, so I don't want to call it a waltz, but there is a strong chance that it is written in 3/4 and it was created to feel waltzy. It was created with a waltz in mind. That's just not how something came off to me, and really made it feel like it was in more of a 6/8, which is more of a two pulse rather than a three pulse. But I still felt some waltz ideas in there, so I don't know if maybe I was hearing a polyrhythm and latching onto that as the root heartbeat of the track, the section, or if maybe this was all intentional. I didn't want it to feel confusing. I don't know. But I counted that as a 6/8, which I think is very important. Moving on to the last half of the track, which is where I noticed a new time signature. Now, this might have popped up earlier than just the last half, but that's where I started to pick up on it. And I counted 13/8, which is technically true, but that's also a very unusual time signature. A little more usual than some of the stuff that's popped up on the channel. I have seen some 13/8 at least, but it is not widely used. However, alternating 6/8 and 7/8 is. And I really think that's what's happening in the last half of this track. And I think it's really interesting that somewhere in there they added one extra beat, and I didn't catch when it happened, but I did notice it eventually. So that's pretty cool. They added a beat without really changing the feel of the song. And I think a lot of that comes down to the post rocky nature of it. A lot of the song is just traditionally would be tremolo picking. We're going to touch on that in a second. Traditionally, this would just be a lot of tremolo picking without any real accented beats. It's really up to the drummer to give the song the pulse or the heartbeat. And but without that, if you're really just paying attention to the growls and the guitar work, it's really easy to not notice any time changes because no beat is emphasized, so there isn't a really strong pulse to the song. So if they were to change the heartbeat, the pulse of a section, it's not going to be as noticeable as tracks that really dig into the pulse of a time signature. Um, However, like I said, there was a moment, it had to have been the drums, that, it might not have been the drums. It might have been, if we take the tremolo picking, and instead of seeing it as a series of 8th or 16th notes, as long as a note is the same, we group it together and we end up with a lot of tied together half and whole notes, most likely. There were note transitions moving between pitches that were getting weird. I think that's what clued me in that we had changed. And I started to count it in four, and I was getting seven, no, 6.5/4, which of course, much more easier to count would be 13/8. You multiply both by two. And then I really started to feel the 7 pulse and then the 6 pulse back to back. So yeah, that's I'm fairly sure that's what happens at the end, which reaffirms my idea that it's 6/8 at the beginning, sneaking a note in rather than 3/4 and then changing to this 13/8. Um, So I wanted to get that out of the way because that did catch me off guard. Also, post rock with what I believe is bowed violins and cellos. Is that what's going on here? Um, at the beginning, I was sure that this wasn't going to fit the week. I kind of heard some classical ideas way down in the mix. The things that were really up in front, though, was the tremolo picked, the really quickly played um, higher pitched line, the growls, screams, and the drum. That's what really stands out at the forefront of the mix. And I really thought that was a guitar. I did. By the end, I came around to thinking that it might be an electric violin that has a bit of modulation on it, maybe through amps, cabs, pedals, something, just to give it a bit of that electric edge that you can get out of distorting, electric guitars. But I only think that because this is Great Orchestral Use Week, and otherwise, I would probably be commenting about how uh, the string section is used to just widen and pull in the texture of the sound underneath a rock sound. But because of the week we're in, I'm kind of leaning towards it being a violin that is given a bit of overdrive, maybe just to give it a bit of that harshness. Um, with that said, though, I mean, I kind of liked what was going on here. I've talked about in the past. I get post rock. It is this pocket of sound sitting in a single atmosphere, and it's just this constant aggression that you can't really get anywhere else. I understand the appeal to it, but it's not necessarily my cup of tea. However, this intrigues me. This is the kind of experimentation that I like to see, even if, again, I'm not too keen on the music. It definitely does what it does very well. There's atmosphere and specifically a lot of pain coming out from both the musical side and the vocalist. That's what I get out of it, at least. But I love this experimentation of saying, hey, what if we did this, but that? And it ends up being greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, this is just post rock with string instruments. At least I believe it is. But the thing is that small timbre change completely changes the feel of the song. And I think a lot of that also comes from greater utilization of the cello to work with maybe not chordal ideas, but harmonization ideas. Um, because the bass, I feel like usually in this type of music, when we've checked out post music in the past, that the bass tends to get blotted out because of the wall of sound and sort of the flattening of the instruments in the mix to create this single solitary audio force rather than a unique dynamic diversification of all the timbres present in the track. That flattening and compressing tends to give everything sort of a singular identity. It's hard to pick things out, and I feel like the bass doesn't do well in rock and metal to begin with, and this just amplifies that and removes it even more usually. And here, I felt like the cello was used more in a classical way to give color to some of the chordal stuff through harmonization that's going on. And there's a couple of passages. The cello isn't really doing a lot. There's a lot of just existing to hold that low note, to widen the sound, stuff that we typically see when bringing in stringed instruments to rock and metal. However, there are a few passages that I think it's beautiful. It has a nice little run, maybe of quarter notes. It's not a real quick melodic idea, but it is a little transition, usually going between two ideas and a couple of passing notes as we get to that new idea. And it usually takes about a bar to get there. And you get, like I said, a couple quarter notes in between the starting note that you're holding out and then the note you're going to be moving to, and you get these nice passing tones. But those passing tones add a lot of character to those sections, and I think ultimately it elevates this type of writing. And maybe that's just me because I do put a lot of weight on harmonization and chord distance and the sort of harmonic textures and characteristics that you can get out of utilizing different chords, coloring outside of the lines and stuff like that. I do put a lot of weight on that as far as composition goes. So I might be quite biased in believing that this elevates the craft of this post style of writing, but it's little moments like that where I'm like, oh yeah, all right, so that just introduced this new set of emotions, and it increases the complexity of the atmosphere. And for a genre that tends to rely heavily on atmosphere, to me, I see that as just a net positive. I would love to see it happen more often, and maybe it does. I've only checked out a handful of post songs, not even bands, songs. Less than 10 easily that I've checked out in the genre, so definitely have not exhausted this style of music. But this is something that I would like to see more often, is just a little bit more harmonic work going on inside of these really long drawn out notes, creating this atmosphere and sort of thickness and wall of sound. Um, so yeah, like I said, this is kind of a bit of a turnaround. The first half of this track, I was really, uh, I was getting ready to talk about it in a negative way. I enjoyed what they were going for, but as far as the week's theme, I felt it wasn't going to fit, and it was actually going to be the exact opposite. But having the song end, by the end of the song, yeah, let me say it, by the end of the song, I was complete 180. I think it's kind of phenomenal what happened here. I don't know if it's the band, and they would have done that if they had guitars as well, or if it was the fact that they brought in the violin and cello. I still believe that those are the two instruments, but I don't have any hard proof. Like I said, that violin still kind of sounds like a guitar to me in some sections. I'm not 100% on either instrument yet. But yeah, like I was saying, I don't know if the composer would have written it this way if it was done with guitars in a more traditional sense, or if it's because he brought in, or because they brought in these instruments, that had them sort of reevaluate their writing style and change the way that they write the song harmonically. I don't know which way that comes from, but I really enjoy it. It's those small little tweaks that help a genre evolve over time. Small steps. Everything is baby steps. And over, a 10, 15-year gap, the baby steps all add up. So, yeah, this was interesting. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about is that dude's harsh vocals. Just raw pain. I don't even know if I heard words. I just that's a terrible impersonation of whatever technique he was using. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if I heard words. I just heard pained yelling or screaming, and it really added to a lot of the atmosphere. The like I said, the pain in the song. It's a song that is full of these negative emotions. Just tension and clawing and pain. I have to keep coming back to pain just because of those vocals. Um, so yeah, they set out to do a job, and I'd say they executed quite well. But those are just my thoughts on So Hideous's The True Peers. This is where you guys come in. No, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed it or not. Maybe it bounced off of you. Maybe you found your new favorite band. They only have 80 subscribers, so if you dig this, show them some love. And if you're a fan already, hit me up with some more recommendations. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box to check out some links that are for stuff adjacent to the channel. Maybe you'd like to help support the channel through Patreon. Maybe you'd like to chat with me and the rest of the community in the Discord channel. And there's also a Twitter if you'd like to see some of the random things I tweet about. All right. Another way to support the channel is through YouTube's stuff. The liking and the subscribing and the ringing the bell. They'll also help you out if you want to be notified about future videos. That's the best way to go about it. Alright, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual, with the penultimate great orchestral uses video. I still need a better theme name. That does not roll off the tongue at all. And until next time, remember to be critical, but never cynical about the music you listen to. And have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.